The temperature had dropped to 15 degrees by the time Ryan pulled his truck onto the old mountain highway. February in northern Montana wasn't kind to anyone, especially not after dark. The sun had vanished behind the jagged peaks an hour ago, leaving nothing but endless darkness and the occasional glint of ice on the road. Ryan was used to the cold. 15 years as a Navy SEAL had taught him how to handle worse conditions than this. These days, at 42, he ran a small wilderness survival school about 20 miles outside the nearest town. Teaching city folks how to build fires and find water was a far cry from his old life, but it was honest work. And it was quiet. After everything he'd seen and done, quiet felt like a luxury. His headlights cut through the darkness as he rounded another bend in the road. That's when he saw it. A dark sedan, nose first in a snowbank on the right side of the highway. Its hazard lights blinked weakly like a dying heartbeat. Ryan's foot moved to the brake without thinking. Old habits die hard. You don't leave people stranded in conditions like this, not if you have a conscience. He pulled his truck over about 30 feet behind the sedan and grabbed his flashlight from the glove box. The wind hit him like a punch when he opened the door. It howled through the canyon, carrying tiny needles of ice that stung his face. He pulled his collar up and walked toward the stranded car, his breath forming clouds in the frozen air. As he got closer, he could see someone in the driver's seat. Ryan knocked on the window and the person inside jumped like he'd been shot. The window rolled down slowly, and Ryan found himself looking at a man who had no business being out here. Mid-30s maybe, wearing a business suit with a thin overcoat, no gloves, no proper winter gear. The guy was shaking so hard his teeth were chattering. "You all right in there?" Ryan asked, keeping his tone calm and friendly. The man nodded, but it was the kind of nod that meant absolutely not all right. "My car. It just slid off the road about 3 hours ago. I've been trying to get cell service, but my phone died." His voice cracked on the last word. Ryan swept his flashlight over the situation. The sedan's front wheels were buried deep in the snowbank, and judging by the ice underneath, this car wasn't going anywhere without serious help. "What brings you out here dressed like that?" "I was following my GPS," the man said, and Ryan could hear embarrassment mixing with the fear in his voice. "It told me this was a shortcut. I didn't realize it would be this remote." Remote was putting it kindly. This stretch of highway saw maybe 5 cars a day during summer. In winter, Ryan would be surprised if anyone else came through here before morning, and morning was still 10 hours away. In this cold, that could be a death sentence. "I'm Daniel," the man said, extending a shaking hand through the window. "Ryan." He shook the hand briefly. "Look, Daniel, we need to get you warmed up before we do anything else. You got frostbite starting on those fingers." Ryan went back to his truck and grabbed his emergency kit. He always kept spare supplies, a habit from his military days. He pulled out a thick fleece jacket and a thermos of coffee he'd made before leaving home. Back at Daniel's car, he handed both through the window. "Put that on. Drink this. We'll figure out the rest." Daniel took the jacket with trembling hands and wrapped it around himself like it was made of gold. He unscrewed the thermos and took a long drink, closing his eyes in relief. "Thank you," he whispered. "I thought I was going to freeze to death out here." While Daniel warmed up, Ryan circled the sedan, assessing the damage. The situation wasn't good. The car was wedged in tight, and with the ice underneath, even his truck might not have enough traction to pull it free. He returned to his vehicle and grabbed a tow strap anyway. Worth a shot. For the next half hour, Ryan worked in the bitter cold, hooking up the strap and trying different angles. His truck's engine roared as he applied power, but the sedan barely budged. The ice was too slick and the snow too deep. After the 4th attempt, Ryan cut the engine and walked back to Daniel's window. "It's not happening tonight," he said. "This car's staying put until we can get a proper tow truck out here. But that's not the main problem right now." Daniel's face fell. "What do I do?" "I can't stay here all night." "You're right about that," Ryan said. "In this cold, hypothermia would set in before morning, even with that jacket. I can't leave you out here." He paused, thinking through his options. "The nearest town is about 40 miles west. I can drive you there, get you set up at a motel. You can call for a tow truck in the morning when the roads are safer." Relief washed over Daniel's face, but Ryan noticed something else too. A flicker of anxiety that didn't quite match the situation. "You'd do that? For a complete stranger?" "Can't leave you out here to freeze," Ryan said simply. "Grab whatever you need from your car." Daniel gathered a small briefcase and a duffel bag from the back seat. As he climbed out of the sedan, Ryan got a better look at him. The business suit was expensive, the kind worn by lawyers or executives, but it was rumpled like he'd been wearing it for days. And despite the cold, Daniel was sweating. His eyes kept darting up and down the dark highway like he was expecting someone. They walked to Ryan's truck and Daniel climbed into the passenger seat. Ryan cranked up the heat and pulled back onto the highway, heading west toward Clearwater Ridge. For the first few miles, neither man spoke. The only sounds were the truck's engine and the wind battering the windows. "So what kind of work do you do?" Ryan asked, trying to break the silence. "Software," Daniel said quickly. "Consulting. I travel a lot for clients. Must be important clients if you're driving through Montana in February." Daniel shifted in his seat. "Yeah, something like that." Ryan's internal radar pinged. Something felt off. In his years with the SEALs, he'd learned to read people. Body language, tone of voice, the little inconsistencies that meant someone wasn't telling the whole truth. Daniel was nervous, and not just from being stranded. He kept checking the side mirror like someone might be following them on this empty highway, but Ryan pushed the thoughts aside. Not everyone was comfortable around strangers, especially after a scary experience. Maybe the guy was just shaken up. Maybe he was always this anxious. Either way, it wasn't Ryan's business. He was just giving someone a ride to safety. Nothing more complicated than that, or so he thought. The lights of Clearwater Ridge appeared in the distance about an hour later. The small town looked half asleep, most windows dark, streets empty. Ryan pulled into the parking lot of the only motel still showing a vacancy sign. The Pines Motor Lodge. He'd stayed there once himself years ago. It was basic but clean. Inside the office, Daniel's credit cards wouldn't work. First one declined, then another, then a third. The night clerk, a bored teenager scrolling through his phone, just shrugged. "Cash only then." Daniel patted his pockets, his face growing pale. "I don't have enough cash on me." Ryan pulled out his wallet without thinking. He handed the clerk 320s. "This cover it?" "Yeah, that works," the clerk said, sliding a key across the counter. Daniel turned to Ryan, and for the first time that night, his expression was completely genuine. Grateful, but also something deeper, something that looked almost like guilt. "You didn't have to do that. You've already done so much, it's just money," Ryan said. "Get some rest. Call that tow truck in the morning." They exchanged phone numbers, and Daniel gripped Ryan's hand with surprising intensity. His eyes locked onto Ryan's face. "You may have saved my life tonight. I mean that." The words carried weight that Ryan didn't quite understand, but he nodded, wished Daniel good night, and headed back to his truck. As he drove the 20 miles to his cabin in the woods, that uneasy feeling returned. Something about tonight didn't add up. Wrong clothes for the weather, declined credit cards, that constant nervousness. But Ryan was tired and his cabin was warm. He'd done his good deed. Tomorrow everything would make sense. Tomorrow Daniel would get his car towed and go on with his life. And Ryan would go back to teaching people how to purify water and identify edible plants. Except tomorrow would bring something Ryan never expected. Tomorrow would prove that sometimes helping a stranger on a dark highway changes everything, and not always in ways you can predict. Ryan's cabin sat at the end of a long dirt road, surrounded by pine trees that blocked out most of the moonlight. He'd built half of it himself after leaving the military, needing something to do with his hands while his mind adjusted to civilian life. Tonight, the familiar sight of his front porch should have brought comfort. Instead, that nagging feeling from the highway refused to let go. He went through his usual routine. Locked the truck. Checked the perimeter lights. Made sure his dog, a German Shepherd named Chief, had food and water. But his mind kept circling back to Daniel. The sweating despite the cold. Those darting eyes. The way he'd said, "You may have saved my life," like he meant it literally. Ryan tried to sleep but couldn't. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to Chief's steady breathing from the floor beside him. At 2 a.m, he gave up. He went to his office, a small room lined with books about wilderness survival and old military manuals. On his desk sat a laptop he rarely used except for billing and scheduling classes. He opened it and stared at the screen for a long moment. What he was thinking about doing wasn't strictly legal. During his years with the SEALs, Ryan had maintained certain contacts. People who could access information that ordinary citizens couldn't. He'd promised himself after leaving the service that he'd never use those connections for personal reasons. That part of his life was over, but something told him Daniel was in real trouble, and if that trouble had followed Ryan home somehow, he needed to know about it. He picked up his phone and dialed a number he hadn't called in 3 years. It rang 4 times before a gravelly voice answered. "This better be good, calling at this hour." "It's Ryan, I need a favor." There was a pause. "Ryan Fletcher, thought you were living the quiet life up in the mountains?" "I am, but I ran into something tonight that doesn't feel right." "Need you to run a name for me." "Daniel Brennan. Mid-30s, says he's a software consultant." "That's it? That's all you got?" "For now." Another pause. "Give me 20 minutes. Ryan made coffee while he waited. Strong and black, the way he'd learned to drink it during long missions where sugar and cream were luxuries. Chief padded into the kitchen and rested his head on Ryan's knee, sensing his owner's tension. The phone rang 18 minutes later. "Ryan, what exactly did you get yourself into?" His contact's voice had changed. Gone was the casual tone. Now he sounded worried. "Just tell me what you found." "Daniel Brennan is a federal witness. He's supposed to be testifying in 10 days against a major defense contractor. Something about fraudulent billing and kickbacks that go up the chain to some very powerful people. We're talking millions of dollars, maybe more." Ryan's grip tightened on the phone. "Supposed to be? He disappeared from protective custody 2 days ago. Walked right out of a safe house in Denver. The marshals have been going crazy trying to find him. There's a bulletin out, but it's being kept quiet. They don't want whoever he's testifying against to know they've lost him. Why would he run from protective custody? That's the interesting part. According to the file I'm looking at, 3 other witnesses in this case have died in the past 6 months. Car accident, house fire, heart attack. All officially ruled as coincidental, but Brennan didn't buy it. Word is he thinks there's a leak somewhere in the system, someone feeding information to the people he's supposed to testify against. Ryan felt his heart rate pick up. So he's running from both sides. The bad guys and the people supposed to protect him. Looks that way. And Ryan, listen to me carefully. If you've had contact with this guy, you need to be careful. The people hunting him have serious resources. This isn't some street-level thing. We're talking about individuals with connections to intelligence agencies, military contractors, the whole 9 yards. After hanging up, Ryan sat in the dark kitchen for a long time. He thought about calling the number Daniel had given him, but that might make things worse. If Daniel was hiding, a phone call could give away his location. Better to go check on him in person. Ryan grabbed his keys and was halfway to the door when he stopped. He went back to his bedroom and opened the safe in his closet. Inside was a handgun he hadn't touched in months. He checked the magazine, chambered around, and tucked it into his waistband. Chief whined softly, picking up on the change in energy. "Stay here, boy. I'll be back soon." The drive to Clearwater Ridge took 25 minutes. Ryan kept checking his mirrors, making sure nobody was following. The town was completely dark except for a few streetlights and the neon sign of an all-night diner. He pulled into the Pines Motor Lodge at 3 in the morning. Daniel's room was on the ground floor, number 7. Ryan knocked softly. No answer. He knocked again, louder this time. Still nothing. His instincts screamed that something was wrong. The office was locked, but through the window he could see the same teenage clerk from earlier, now asleep with his head on the desk. Ryan knocked hard on the glass until the kid jerked awake. After some confusion and a $20 bill Ryan didn't mention he wanted back, the clerk agreed to check on the guest in room 7. The room was empty. The bed hadn't been touched, but the window was open, curtains blowing in the cold breeze. Daniel had climbed out sometime during the night and disappeared into the darkness. "Did you see him leave?" Ryan asked. The clerk yawned. "Yeah, maybe around midnight. He came to the office all nervous, asking if anyone had been asking about him. I said no. Then he left through the front, but I guess he came back and went out the window instead. Weird, dude." Ryan drove back to his cabin as dawn started breaking over the mountains. His mind raced through possibilities. Daniel was out there somewhere, alone and scared, probably freezing. And if the people hunting him were as dangerous as his contact suggested, Daniel wouldn't last long on his own. Back home, Ryan spent the day in a state of heightened awareness. He set up motion sensors around his property, checked his trail cameras, made sure all his weapons were loaded and accessible. Part of him felt ridiculous, like he was being paranoid. But another part, the part trained by years in special operations, knew better than to ignore his gut. He tried calling Daniel's number several times. It went straight to voicemail. Either the phone was off or the battery had died again. Ryan left one message, keeping it vague. "It's Ryan. If you need help, call me. I know what's going on." The rest of the day crawled by. Ryan went through the motions of normal life. He took Chief for a walk, chopped wood for the fireplace, ate a sandwich he barely tasted, but his mind was elsewhere, playing out scenarios. Where would Daniel go? How long could he survive out there? And more importantly, who else was looking for him? As evening approached, Ryan was outside stacking the firewood he'd chopped. The sky was turning orange and purple, the way it does in the mountains when the sun drops behind the peaks. Chief started barking. Not his normal bark when a deer wandered by. This was his alert bark, the one that meant something was wrong. Ryan heard it then. A sound that didn't belong in this quiet place. The distant thump of helicopter rotors. He looked up and saw it coming over the tree line. A Blackhawk flying low and fast. Not the white and red of search and rescue. This was military green. His blood went cold. This wasn't a coincidence. Someone had connected him to Daniel. Someone knew about their encounter on the highway, and they were coming with questions or maybe something worse. The helicopter circled once like a predator sizing up its prey. Then it began to descend toward the clearing near his cabin. Ryan's hand moved instinctively to the gun at his waist. He had no idea if these were the good guys or the bad guys. In his experience, sometimes there wasn't much difference. Chief pressed against his leg, growling low in his throat. Ryan watched the helicopter touch down, its rotors whipping up snow and dirt. 4 figures emerged, dressed in tactical gear, weapons at the ready. They moved like professionals, like soldiers, or like the kind of people who make witnesses disappear. Ryan stood his ground, his hand near his weapon but not drawing it. Whatever happened in the next few minutes would determine whether he'd just helped a stranger on a dark road, or whether he'd stepped into something that would change his life forever. The figures approached through the settling dust. Ryan's jaw tightened. There was no turning back now. Whatever this was, he was in it. And he'd learned a long time ago that when trouble comes to your door, you don't run. You face it head on and deal with the consequences. The lead figure raised his hand in a gesture that was either peaceful or tactical. Ryan couldn't tell which yet, but he was about to find out. The man standing 10 feet away from Ryan didn't look like he was here to hurt anyone. But Ryan had learned a long time ago that looks could be deceiving, especially when it came to people in tactical gear arriving in military helicopters. "I'm Commander Hayes," the man said, raising his hand slightly to show he meant no harm. "Department of Defense Special Operations. I know this looks intense, but we're not here to cause you trouble." Ryan kept his grip on the axe. Funny way of showing it, landing a Blackhawk in my front yard. Hayes nodded like he understood. "Fair point. But we need to talk, and time isn't on our side. Can we come inside? How about you tell me what this is about first?" "Daniel Brennan. We know you helped him last night. We found your truck on surveillance footage from a gas station outside Clearwater Ridge. We need to know everything you can tell us about where he went and what he said." Ryan studied the commander's face. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept in days. The other 3 soldiers behind him stood at ease but alert, their eyes scanning the tree line. They weren't acting like people about to do something violent. They were acting like people on a mission. Still, Ryan wasn't about to just trust them. "And why should I believe you're the good guys?" Hayes pulled out a badge and credentials, walking slowly forward to hand them to Ryan. "Because the bad guys wouldn't bother showing you identification. They'd just take what they wanted and disappear." Ryan examined the credentials. They looked legitimate, but anyone with enough resources could fake documents. Daniel ran from protective custody. He thought there was a leak. "How do I know you're not part of that leak?" For the first time, Hayes showed something other than military composure. His jaw tightened and his eyes darkened. "Because the leak is exactly why we're here." Daniel was right. Someone on the inside has been feeding information to the people he's supposed to testify against. 3 witnesses are dead. We formed this task force 3 days ago to work outside the normal channels, to find Daniel before the wrong people do. And I'm supposed to just take your word for it? Hayes looked him straight in the eye. "Master Chief Fletcher, I know you spent 15 years as a SEAL. I know you did 3 tours and earned 2 Bronze Stars. I know you understand operational security, and I know you can recognize when someone's telling you the truth. So I'm asking you, SEAL to SEAL, help us find this guy before he ends up dead." The use of his rank and service history hit different. It meant Hayes had done his homework. It also meant they'd known about Ryan long before that helicopter landed. They could have come in hard, could have treated him like a suspect. Instead, they were asking for cooperation. Ryan made a decision. He set down the axe. "Come inside, but your men stay out here." Hayes nodded and gestured to his team to hold position. Ryan led him into the cabin, his dog following close behind, still suspicious of the stranger. Inside, Ryan poured 2 cups of coffee without asking if Hayes wanted any. It's what you did when another service member came to your home. Even under weird circumstances. They sat at the kitchen table. "Tell me everything," Hayes said. Ryan went through the whole story, finding Daniel on the road, the guy's strange behavior, the declined credit cards, dropping him at the motel, his own investigation that revealed Daniel's real identity, finding the empty room this morning with the open window. Hayes listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes on a small pad. When Ryan finished, the commander sat back and rubbed his face. He's smart, I'll give him that. Going dark, moving at night, avoiding his phone. But he's also desperate and scared, which makes people unpredictable. "What exactly is he testifying about?" Ryan asked. Hayes hesitated, then seemed to decide Ryan deserved to know. "Defense contractor fraud. But it's not just about money. The company in question has been selling faulty equipment to the military. Body armor that doesn't stop bullets. Parachutes that don't open. Navigation systems that fail. Soldiers have died because of this equipment. Daniel worked as an accountant for the company and figured out what was happening. He tried to report it internally and they tried to silence him, so he went to the FBI. Ryan felt anger rising in his chest. He thought about the guys he'd served with. Good people who trusted their equipment with their lives. The idea that someone would knowingly sell them faulty gear for profit made him sick. How many people died? At least 17 that we can confirm. Probably more. The number hung in the air between them. 17 families destroyed because someone wanted to save money or make an extra profit. The people protecting this secret have connections everywhere, Hayes continued. Military brass, politicians, intelligence agencies. They've been cleaning up loose ends for months. Daniel is the last witness with direct evidence. If he testifies, the whole thing comes down. If he disappears, everyone walks. So what do you need from me? Did he say anything about where he might go? Family, friends, anywhere he felt safe? Ryan thought back to the drive, trying to remember every word Daniel had said. Most of it had been vague and evasive. But there was one thing, something Daniel had mentioned almost in passing. He said something weird. When I asked if he had people he could call, he said no. Said everyone he cared about was gone. Then he said something like, maybe I should have stayed where things made sense. At the time I thought he was just rambling because he was cold and scared. Hayes leaned forward. Where things made sense. That could be anywhere. Could be his childhood home. People under stress often think about going back to simpler times. Do we know where he grew up? Hayes pulled out his phone and accessed Daniel's file. His eyes scanned the screen. Millbrook. Small town about 60 miles south of here. Parents are deceased. The house was sold 8 years ago. Doesn't matter if it's sold. If he's scared and running on instinct, he might go back there anyway. It's familiar. It's where he felt safe as a kid. Hayes stood up. It's worth checking. But I need you to understand something. The people hunting Daniel are professionals. They've got resources that rival government agencies, private military contractors, surveillance equipment, informants everywhere. If we're wrong about Millbrook, if we go there and find nothing, we might lose our only chance to find him first. And if you don't go and he's there, he's dead. Exactly. Ryan stood up too. I'm coming with you. Hayes shook his head. This isn't your fight. You've done enough. We'll take it from here. With all due respect, Commander, that's not how this works. Daniel trusted me last night when he was desperate. If you show up with 4 armed soldiers, he's going to run or do something stupid. But if I'm there, someone he recognizes, maybe he'll listen. This could get dangerous. I spent 15 years in dangerous situations. I think I can handle it. Hayes studied him for a long moment. Ryan could see him weighing the options, doing the tactical math in his head. Finally, he nodded. All right. But you follow my orders out there. This is a military operation. Understood. They walked outside where the other 3 soldiers were waiting. Hayes briefed them quickly on the new plan. They'd fly to Millbrook, approach Daniel's old house carefully, and hope they got there before anyone else did. As Ryan climbed into the helicopter, he thought about Daniel. Scared and alone somewhere, thinking everyone was his enemy, not knowing that help was coming, not knowing that the guy who'd given him a ride last night was now part of a mission to save his life. The helicopter lifted off, and Ryan's cabin disappeared below them. His dog was inside, safe and probably confused about why his owner had just left in a military aircraft. Ryan had left him extra food and water just in case. The sun was setting now, painting the mountains in shades of orange and red. Beautiful and deadly at the same time, like everything in nature. They had maybe an hour of daylight left. After that, they'd be searching in the dark. Hayes handed Ryan a tactical vest and a radio earpiece. "Stay close to me. If shooting starts, you get down and stay down. Clear?" "Clear." The helicopter banked south, picking up speed. Below them, the wilderness stretched out forever. Somewhere down there, Daniel was hiding. Maybe in an old house that used to be his home. Maybe somewhere else entirely. And somewhere else down there, other people were looking for him too. People who didn't want him found alive. Ryan checked the gun at his waist and settled in for the flight. He'd started yesterday morning thinking it would be just another normal day. Teaching a survival class, chopping wood, making dinner. Instead, he was flying into what might become the most important mission of his life. And unlike his time in the SEALs, this mission didn't come with backup plans and detailed intelligence. This was happening fast and messy, the way real life usually does. The helicopter flew on through the fading light, racing against time and against people who'd already proven they were willing to kill to keep their secrets. Ryan looked out the window at the mountains passing below and hoped they weren't too late. Because if they were, Daniel Brennan would become witness number 4. Just another accident. Just another name in a file that would get closed and forgotten, but not if Ryan had anything to say about it. He hadn't saved the guy from freezing to death just to let him get killed by corrupt officials covering up their crimes. One way or another, this ended tonight. The helicopter touched down in a field about half a mile outside Millbrook, just as the last bit of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains. Hayes had chosen the landing spot carefully, far enough from town that nobody would hear them coming, but close enough to reach Daniel's old house quickly. Ryan jumped out behind the commander and his team. The cold air hit him immediately, but this was different from last night. Last night he'd been helping a stranger. Tonight he was part of something bigger, something that mattered. Hayes gathered everyone in a tight circle. The house is 6 blocks into town, residential area, mostly empty from what I can see on satellite. We go in quiet, 2-man teams. Ryan, you're with me. If Brennan's there, we approach slowly. No sudden moves. The guy's terrified and probably thinks everyone's trying to kill him. One of the soldiers, a younger guy named Torres, spoke up. "What if someone else got here first? Then we adapt," Hayes said simply. "But let's hope we're the first ones to figure out where he went." They moved through the darkness in formation, using night vision goggles that Hayes had given Ryan. The town of Millbrook was quiet. Most houses had lights on inside, families eating dinner or watching television, completely unaware that a military operation was happening in their neighborhood. Daniel's childhood home was at the end of a street called Maple Drive. It was a small 2-story house with peeling paint and an overgrown yard. Definitely abandoned. A for sale sign in the front yard looked like it had been there for years, faded and crooked. Hayes signaled for everyone to stop. They crouched behind a hedge across the street, watching the house for any sign of movement. Ryan studied the windows. Most were dark, but he thought he saw something in one of the upstairs windows. Just a flicker, like maybe a flashlight had moved across the glass. "I saw it too," Hayes whispered into his radio. "Second floor right window, could be Brennan, could be squatters, could be nothing." "How do you want to play this?" Ryan asked. Hayes thought for a moment. "If we go in tactical, he'll panic. We need a softer approach." He turned to Ryan. "This is where you come in. Walk up to the front door. Knock normally like you're just checking on him. If he's in there and he sees you through a window, he might recognize you, might trust you enough to open the door. And if it's not him, if it's the other guys, then you get down fast and we come in hard, but I don't think it's them. They'd have more vehicles, more people. This feels like someone hiding, not someone hunting." Ryan nodded. It made sense, but walking up to that door still felt like volunteering to be target practice. He took a deep breath and stood up. "Radio if you need us," Hayes said. We'll be right here. Ryan crossed the street trying to look casual even though his heart was pounding. He walked up the cracked driveway and climbed the 3 steps to the front porch. The wood creaked under his weight, loud in the quiet night. He knocked on the door. 3 normal knocks, not aggressive or demanding. Just a person at a door. Nothing happened for a long moment. Then he heard it. Footsteps inside. Slow and careful. Someone was definitely in there. "Daniel," Ryan called out, keeping his voice calm. "It's Ryan from last night. I just want to talk." More silence. Then a voice from inside, muffled through the door. "How did you find me?" "Long story, but I'm not alone. There are some people here who want to help you. Military people, good ones. That's what they all say." Daniel's voice was shaky, like he'd been crying. "Everyone says they want to help right before they try to kill me. I know you're scared. I know you think you can't trust anyone. But Daniel, you're going to freeze to death in there, and the people who really do want to hurt you, they're going to find you eventually. These guys with me, they know about the leak. They're working outside the normal system specifically because they know someone's been compromised." "How do I know that's true?" Ryan thought about what would convince him if their positions were reversed. "Because if we wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I could have let you freeze on that mountain road last night. These guys could have stormed this house 5 minutes ago. Instead, I'm standing here asking you to trust me one more time." The door opened a crack. Ryan could see one of Daniel's eyes peering out, wild with fear and exhaustion. The guy looked terrible. His expensive suit was filthy now, torn in places. His face was scratched and his lips were cracked from the cold. "Where did you grow up?" Daniel asked suddenly. The question caught Ryan off guard. "What? If you're real, if this isn't a trap, tell me something real about yourself. Something a person would know, not something from a file." Ryan understood. Daniel was trying to make sure he was talking to an actual human being, not just someone playing a role. "I grew up in Oregon, small town called Riverside. My dad was a fisherman. Died when I was 12. I joined the Navy at 18 because I didn't know what else to do with my life and I needed to feel like I belonged somewhere. Spent 15 years as a SEAL before I figured out that belonging doesn't come from a uniform. It comes from knowing who you are. Now I live in a cabin in Montana and teach people how to start fires with sticks." Daniel's eye searched Ryan's face through the crack in the door. "You paid for my hotel room." "Yeah, why?" "Because you needed help and I could help. It's not complicated." The door opened wider. Daniel stood there looking like he'd aged 10 years overnight. "If I trust you and I'm wrong, I'm dead. If you don't trust me, you're dead anyway. At least this way you've got a chance." Daniel was quiet for a moment, then he stepped aside. "Okay, but if this goes wrong, I want you to know I really did appreciate what you did last night. Not many people would have stopped." Ryan stepped inside and immediately radioed Hayes. "We're good. He's here. Coming out." 2 minutes later, the whole team was inside the abandoned house. Hayes approached Daniel carefully, hands visible, moving slowly like you would with a scared animal. "Daniel Brennan, I'm Commander Hayes. I'm here to bring you in safely and make sure you live long enough to testify, but I need you to tell me everything. Who you've talked to, where you've been, what you know about the people hunting you." Daniel sat down on the dusty floor looking completely exhausted. "There are 2 of them, private contractors. They've been following me since I left protective custody. I've seen them twice. Once at a rest stop in Wyoming, once at a diner in Idaho. They're good, really good. Military background, I'd guess. They almost caught me in Idaho. I had to jump out a bathroom window and steal a car to get away. Do you know who hired them?" "I have my suspicions, but I can't prove anything." Daniel pulled a small USB drive from his pocket. "Everything I have is on here. Financial records, emails, audio recordings of conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. It's enough to put 20 people in prison for the rest of their lives. That's why they want me dead so badly." Hayes took the USB drive carefully, like it was made of gold. "This is good, this is really good. But we need to move. If those contractors are still tracking you, they might have figured out you came here. We need to get you somewhere secure." As if on cue, Torres's voice came through the radio from his position outside. "Commander, we've got headlights. 2 vehicles approaching from the north, moving slow like they're searching." Hayes's jaw tightened. "How far?" 3 blocks and closing. Everyone ready to move. We're leaving through the back." But before anyone could stand up, they heard it. The sound of car doors closing, then footsteps. Multiple sets of footsteps moving around the house, surrounding it. A voice called out from outside, amplified somehow, professional and calm. "Daniel Brennan, we know you're in there. We also know there are military personnel with you. This doesn't have to end badly. Just send out Brennan and everyone else walks away." Hayes looked at Ryan, then at Daniel. "They're bluffing. They won't let witnesses walk away." "So what do we do?" Daniel asked, his voice barely a whisper. Ryan moved to a window and carefully looked out. He counted at least 6 people surrounding the house, all armed, all moving with military precision. These weren't amateurs. These were the contractors Daniel had been running from, and they'd finally caught up. "We've got no clear exit," Torres reported. "They've got every angle covered." Hayes pulled out his phone and started typing rapidly. "I'm calling for backup, but it'll take 20 minutes to get here. We need to hold this position until then." The voice outside spoke again. "You have 5 minutes to decide. After that, we come in. And trust me, you don't want that." Ryan looked around the old house. Thin walls, multiple windows, very little cover. This was a terrible place to defend. They were outnumbered and outgunned. And if shooting started, Daniel would be the primary target. "There has to be another way," Ryan said. But as he looked at the faces around him, at Daniel's terrified eyes and Hayes's grim expression, he realized they were out of options. Sometimes there's no clever solution. Sometimes you just have to stand your ground and hope you're tough enough to survive what comes next. The 5 minutes started ticking down. Outside, the contractors waited patiently. They had all night. They had superior numbers. They probably thought this would be easy, but they didn't know they were dealing with Navy SEALs. And SEALs don't give up. Not when lives are on the line. Not when doing the right thing means standing between a witness and the people trying to silence the truth. Ryan checked his weapon one more time and positioned himself near a window. Whatever happened next, he was ready. He'd made his choice when he stopped on that mountain road, and he'd see it through to the end, whatever that end might be. 4 minutes left. Ryan could hear the contractors moving outside, positioning themselves for an assault. They were professionals, no doubt about that. But so was Hayes and his team, and Ryan hadn't forgotten everything he'd learned in 15 years of service. Hayes was on his phone, speaking quietly, but urgently. "I don't care what protocols say. We need air support now. We've got the witness, and we're surrounded by hostile contractors. Yes, I'll take full responsibility." Daniel sat against the wall, clutching that USB drive like it was the only thing keeping him alive, which, in a way, it was. Ryan moved away from the window and sat down next to him. "Hey," Ryan said quietly. "You doing okay?" Daniel let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "Am I okay? I've been running for 3 days. I've barely slept. I've eaten nothing but gas station food, and now I'm probably going to die in my childhood home. So no, I'm not really okay." "You're not going to die here." "How can you know that?" "Because I stopped for you on that road and I don't do things halfway. If I'm going to help someone, I help them all the way through. That's the deal." Daniel looked at him with tired eyes. "Why did you stop, really? Most people would have just kept driving." Ryan thought about the question. It was something he'd asked himself a few times since last night. "My dad used to say that you find out who you really are in the moments when nobody's watching. When there's no reward for doing the right thing. You stopped on that road, freezing and scared, and I could have told myself it wasn't my problem. Could have convinced myself someone else would come along. But I would have known. Would have had to live with the fact that I chose convenience over someone's life, and I guess I'm not built that way. The world needs more people like you. The world needs more people willing to do what you're doing, standing up when it's dangerous, telling the truth when it's easier to stay quiet. That takes real courage." Before Daniel could respond, the voice outside spoke again. 3 minutes. We're not bluffing, Commander Hayes. We know who you are. We know your team. We've got authorization from people who outrank you. This is officially sanctioned. Send out Brennan and this ends peacefully. Hayes turned away from the window, his face hard. They're lying. No official authorization would come through private contractors. They're trying to make us doubt ourselves. Torres was at another window, watching the perimeter. They're getting into position for a breach. 2 at the front door, 2 at the back, 2 covering windows. Ryan's mind raced through options. They were outnumbered but not outmatched. Hayes and his team were elite operators. The question was whether they could hold out long enough for backup to arrive without anyone getting killed. Then Ryan remembered something. A detail from his brief time in the house. Hayes, does this place have a basement? According to the floor plans, yes. Why? Ryan turned to Daniel. When you were a kid, did the basement have any other way out? A storm cellar or bulkhead door? Daniel's eyes lit up with understanding. Yes. My dad installed one on the side of the house. I used to sneak out through it when I was a teenager. The door opens into the bushes along the property line. Hayes moved quickly, checking his tablet. If they positioned people based on standard home entry points, they might have missed that side. Torres, Phillips, get Brennan to that basement. Ryan, you go with them. Get him to the extraction point we passed on the way in. The field where we landed. What about you? Ryan asked. My team stays here and makes them think we're all dug in for a fight. By the time they figure out Brennan's gone, you'll have a head start. I've got backup coming in 15 minutes. We can hold that long. You're asking me to leave you here. Hayes looked him straight in the eye. I'm asking you to complete the mission. Get the witness to safety. That's what matters here. Nothing else. Ryan wanted to argue, but he knew Hayes was right. The mission was Daniel. Getting him out alive. Everything else was secondary. All right. But you better make it out of this. Wasn't planning on dying in Montana? Hayes said with a tight smile. Now go. Ryan, Torres, and Phillips got Daniel moving toward the basement stairs. They could hear the contractors outside getting ready. 1 minute left on the countdown, maybe less. The basement was dark and musty, full of old boxes and forgotten furniture. Phillips found the bulkhead door exactly where Daniel said it would be. It was rusted and looked like it hadn't been opened in years. This is going to make noise, Phillips whispered. From upstairs, they heard Hayes' voice loud and clear, obviously meant for the contractors to hear. We're not sending anyone out. You want Brennan, you're going to have to come in here and take him. And I promise you that's not going to go the way you think. It was a bluff, but a good one, buying them time. Torres and Phillips worked on the bulkhead door, slowly prying it open. The metal groaned, but finally gave way. Cold air rushed in. They could see bushes outside, and beyond that, darkness. Go quiet, Torres said. Single file. Ryan, you lead since you know the way back. I'll take rear security. They climbed out one by one. Ryan went first, pushing through the bushes onto the neighboring property. It was an empty lot overgrown with weeds. Perfect cover. Daniel came next, moving surprisingly well for someone who'd been running for days. Phillips followed, then Torres, who carefully closed the bulkhead door behind them. Just as they moved away from the house, they heard it. Gunfire. Not a lot, just a few controlled bursts. Hayes and his team had engaged the contractors. Keep moving, Torres said urgently. They're buying us time. Don't waste it. They moved through the darkness, using yards and alleys to stay off the main streets. Ryan led them on a circuitous route, doubling back twice to make sure they weren't being followed. 20 minutes of careful movement brought them to the edge of town, and then into the field where the helicopter had landed. But the field was empty. Where's the bird? Phillips asked, scanning the area. Torres checked his radio. Hayes, we're at the extraction point. Where's our ride? Static. Then Hayes' voice, strained but controlled. Backup's 3 minutes out. They'll bring extraction for all of us. Hold position. Daniel sat down in the grass, breathing hard. We made it? Not yet, Ryan said, keeping watch on the road. But we're close. Those 3 minutes felt like 3 hours. Every sound made them tense. Every shadow could be a contractor who'd figured out their escape route. But finally they heard it. The beautiful sound of helicopter rotors in the distance. 2 Blackhawks came in fast and low. The first one circled the town, providing support for Hayes and his team. The second landed in the field, its rotors whipping up grass and dirt. A soldier jumped out and waved them forward. Ryan helped Daniel to his feet and they ran for the helicopter. Once inside, Ryan finally allowed himself to believe they might actually pull this off. The pilot's voice came through the headset. Team 2 is extracting Commander Hayes now. Everyone's accounted for. No casualties on our side. Relief flooded through Ryan. Hayes had made it. They'd all made it. The helicopter lifted off and turned north, leaving Millbrook behind. Below them, Ryan could see the contractors retreating to their vehicles, knowing they'd lost. The mission had failed. The witness was safe. Daniel sat across from Ryan, still holding that USB drive. What happens now? Now you testify. You put those people in prison. You make sure no more soldiers die because of faulty equipment. And after that? After that, you get a new life. New name, new place. It's not what you wanted, but you'll be alive. Daniel nodded slowly. Can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think any of this matters? I mean, we got away tonight, but there are always more people willing to lie and cheat and kill for money. Will my testimony really change anything? Ryan thought about that. About all the bad things he'd seen in the world, all the corruption and greed and violence. It would be easy to say none of it mattered. That one person couldn't make a difference. But then he thought about the 17 soldiers who'd died, the families they'd left behind, and he thought about how many more would die if people like Daniel didn't stand up. Maybe it doesn't change everything, Ryan said finally, but it changes something. And sometimes that's enough. You're making sure 17 families get answers. You're making sure the people responsible face consequences. That matters. That matters a lot. The helicopter flew on through the night. Below them, the mountains stretched out forever, dark and endless. Somewhere down there, Ryan's dog was probably wondering where he'd gone. His cabin was probably cold by now, the fire burnt out. But he'd done the right thing. He'd seen it through. And tomorrow or the next day, he'd go back to his quiet life. He'd teach his classes and chop his wood and pretend this had never happened. Except he'd know. He'd know that when it mattered, when someone needed help, he'd been there. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Be there when we're needed. Stand up when it's hard. Do the right thing even when nobody's watching. 3 weeks later, Ryan was outside his cabin splitting logs when a car pulled up his driveway. An unfamiliar sedan. But the driver who stepped out looked familiar. Different hair, different glasses, but the same eyes. Daniel walked toward him slowly, like he was nervous about the reception he'd get. You're not supposed to be here, Ryan said, but he was smiling. I know, but my testimony's done. The trial's over. 12 arrests so far, including a senator and a brigadier general. And I wanted to say thank you, in person. One more time. They shook hands, and this time Daniel's grip was steady and strong. Not the terrified man from that snowy road, but someone who'd found his courage and used it. You've got a new life waiting somewhere, Ryan said. Why risk coming back here? Because you risked everything for me. A stranger. And I needed you to know it wasn't for nothing. The testimony worked. Those 17 families are getting answers, and no more soldiers will die from that company's equipment. Daniel reached into his pocket and pulled out a photo. This is Staff Sergeant Anthony Rodriguez, 26 years old, died in Afghanistan when his body armor failed. The armor your testimony got answers about. His wife sent me this picture. Said to tell you thank you. Ryan looked at the photo, a young man in uniform smiling at the camera. Someone's husband, someone's son, someone who'd trusted his equipment and paid with his life. His daughter was born 3 months after he died, Daniel continued. She's 2 now. Because of what we did, she'll grow up knowing the truth about why her father died, and knowing the people responsible were held accountable. That's because of you, Ryan. Because you stopped on a cold road and helped a stranger. Ryan handed back the photo, his throat tight. Get out of here before someone sees you. Go live that new life. Make it count. Daniel nodded and headed back to his car. But before he drove away, he rolled down the window. Hey, Ryan. The world needs more people who stop, who help, who give a damn. Don't change. Then he was gone, disappearing down the dirt road off to whatever future waited for him. Ryan went back to splitting logs. His dog came and sat beside him, tail wagging. The mountains stood silent and strong all around. And somewhere, 17 families had answers. Justice had been served. And all because one night in the freezing cold, a man had decided that someone else's life was worth stopping for. Sometimes that's all it takes to change the world. Just one person willing to help. Just one person who stops.